Ethan woke to the sound of unfamiliar breathing that wasn't his own. It took him several seconds to realize the rhythm was calm, controlled, almost deliberately measured. Nothing like the erratic beeping and clipped voices he remembered from the moment before everything went dark. The ceiling above him was not the sterile white of a human medical bay, but a smooth, softly glowing surface that curved like the inside of a shell. Warm amber light pulsed faintly through it, responding to his breathing as if the room itself were aware of him. He tried to move. A dull ache answered him immediately, spreading from his chest outward, heavy but not sharp. His body felt stabilized, as if something had already done the hard work of keeping him alive. "Do not sit up." The voice was calm, feminine, and unmistakably not human. Ethan froze. Slowly, he turned his head. She was leaning over him, close enough that he could see individual strands of pale hair braided with meticulous precision, the soft glow of unfamiliar symbols embedded into the dark fabric of her uniform. Her eyes, large, luminous, and an impossible shade between blue and silver, were fixed on him with focused attention. Not alarm, not fear, assessment. "You suffered cardiac destabilization during atmospheric transition," she continued, as if narrating a chart. "Your species' tolerance margin is narrower than anticipated." I intervened. Ethan swallowed. His throat was dry but functional. "Am I alive?" he asked, her lips curved faintly, not a smile, more like acknowledgement. "Yes." That single word carried weight. Finality. She straightened slightly, hands resting on the edge of the medical platform. The movement drew his attention despite himself. Her posture radiated control, every motion economical, deliberate, as though nothing about her existence was accidental. "My name is Caroline Valcora," she said, "Chief Royal Medici of the Aurelian throne." Royal, that word landed harder than the pain in his chest. "You're royal," Ethan murmured. "I serve the crown directly," she corrected, "which makes what happened to you my responsibility." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Lucky me." For the first time, something shifted in her expression. Amusement, faint but genuine, flickered behind her eyes. "Humans," she said quietly, "experience near-death events with humor. It's a coping mechanism," he replied automatically. "Helps keep the panic manageable." She tilted her head, studying him. The faint glow along her collar pulsed once, then settled. "Your panic response has already subsided," she observed. "That is impressive." Ethan tried to grin and failed. "I'll take the compliment." Silence followed, not awkward, but charged. He became acutely aware of how close she still was, how the air between them felt warmer, heavier, as if proximity itself mattered here in ways he didn't yet understand. "You're on an alien flagship," she said after a moment. "Under royal medical authority, human command has been notified of your survival." "Survival," he echoed. "That bad, huh?" Her gaze softened, not pity, but something closer to respect. "You should not have survived," she said honestly, "and yet you did." Her hand lifted, hovering near his chest before stopping, as if she'd caught herself. The glow beneath her skin dimmed a fraction. "I will remain with you until your stabilization cycle completes," she continued. "Any distress must be reported immediately." Ethan met her eyes. "You're staying?" "Yes." "Is that normal?" He asked, a pause. "No." Something unspoken passed between them then, an awareness, sharp and undeniable. He didn't know why his pulse quickened, only that it did. He didn't know why the way she looked at him felt like more than professional concern. But he knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. "Thank you," he said quietly. Her gaze held his for a fraction longer than necessary. "You are under my care now, Ethan Cole," she replied. "And care, once given, carries meaning here." The lights dimmed slightly as she straightened, but the warmth didn't fade. As consciousness began to pull him back under, one thought lingered, clear and unsettling. He hadn't just woken up in an alien medical bay. He had woken up under the attention of someone powerful enough that even survival felt like the beginning of something irreversible. Ethan drifted in and out of awareness for what felt like hours, though time aboard the flagship did not behave the way he expected. There was no steady hum of machinery like on human ships, no sharp transitions between waking and sleep. Consciousness here faded and returned gently, guided by something precise and deliberate. Each time he surfaced, she was there, sometimes standing at the edge of the medical platform, reviewing translucent data projections that hovered in the air like suspended glass. Sometimes seated beside him, posture relaxed but alert, as though she could sense the moment his awareness sharpened. He began to recognize her presence before opening his eyes. It was the stillness, not absence of movement, but controlled readiness, like a blade resting in its sheath. "You are regaining coherence more quickly than projected," Caroline said during one such moment, her voice low and steady. "Your neural patterns are stabilizing ahead of schedule." "Guess I'm stubborn," Ethan murmured. "My sister used to say my body never got the memo when it was supposed to quit." Her fingers paused mid-gesture above the projection. "Sister," she repeated, "you speak of her in the past." Ethan swallowed. "Yeah, she didn't make it through an outbreak back home. Medical failure, that's why I joined the Exchange Corps. Thought maybe I could prevent that kind of thing from happening again." The glow beneath Caroline's skin shifted subtly, cooler tones, reflective rather than clinical. "Then you did not come here for glory," she said. "No," he replied. "Just answers, maybe some better ones than we had." She studied him with renewed focus, as though reevaluating data that could not be quantified. "Intent matters," she said quietly, "even when outcomes are uncertain." A silence followed. Not heavy considered. "Why were you the one treating me?" Ethan asked at last. "Aren't there other doctors, less royal ones?" Her lips curved faintly. "There are many capable healers aboard this vessel," she acknowledged. "But your condition triggered several thresholds. Political, biological, symbolic. That doesn't sound reassuring." "It should not," she said honestly. "You crossed into a margin where protocol yields to authority. And you're that authority." "Yes," he exhaled slowly. "So if I flatline again, does that start a war?" A flicker of amusement returned, brief but real. "Only if you do so dramatically." Despite himself, Ethan laughed soft, careful not to aggravate his chest. The sound seemed to surprise her. The glow along her collar brightened a fraction. "You are disarming," she observed. "People keep telling me that," he replied. "Usually right before things go wrong." Her gaze lingered on him, searching for something beyond vitals and neural response. "You are not behaving as expected," she said. "Story of my life." She reached toward him again, this time without hesitation. Her fingers pressed lightly against the fabric over his sternum. Warmth radiated through the contact, not heat but presence, awareness. As if her touch carried intent as much as pressure. "Your heart rhythm remains irregular," she noted, "but not unstable." Ethan held his breath, suddenly conscious of how close she was again, of the faint luminescence pulsing beneath her skin, responding to his heartbeat in subtle synchrony. "Is that normal?" he asked. Her eyes met his. For a moment, something unreadable passed through them. "No," she said softly, "it is not." She withdrew her hand, straightening with deliberate composure. "You will remain under observation," she continued, voice returning to formal cadence. "When you wake fully, you will be briefed on your status aboard this vessel." "Status," Ethan echoed. "That sounds official." "It is," she said. "You are now classified as a protected individual under royal medical jurisdiction." "That's a mouthful." "It carries obligations," she added, "for both of us." Before he could ask what that meant, the ambient light shifted, subtle but unmistakable. A signal. Caroline's posture changed instantly, attention sharpening. "The Crown has been notified of your recovery," she said. "There will be questions." "About me." "About you," she confirmed. "And about why I intervened personally." Ethan felt a strange knot form in his chest, part anxiety, part something else entirely. "Did you have a choice?" he asked. Her gaze returned to him, steady and unflinching. Yes, she said. That answer lingered between them long after she turned away. As he watched her move toward the far end of the chamber, elegant, controlled, undeniably powerful, Ethan realized something unsettling. Whatever had happened during those first critical moments, it hadn't been routine, and whatever came next would not be either. Ethan's first fully conscious awakening came without warning. No gradual return, no drifting. One moment there was darkness, the next, clarity. The medical chamber sharpened into focus around him. Smooth curved walls alive with slow-moving light, faint harmonic vibrations in the air that resonated more through bone than ear. His body felt whole, not merely healed but recalibrated, as if something had adjusted him to fit this place. He sat up. This time no pain answered him. That was ill-advised. Saraline stood near the chamber's entrance, her back partially turned as she conferred with a tall, slender figure Ethan hadn't seen before. The other being alien like her but older, their luminescence subdued and formal, fell silent immediately. Saraline turned. Her gaze moved over him quickly, assessing, not alarmed but unmistakably alert. "You are stable," she said, "but you were instructed to wait." "Sorry," Ethan replied, swinging his legs over the side of the platform. "I got tired of feeling like cargo." The corner of her mouth lifted, barely. "You are not cargo," she said. "If you were, you would have been transferred already." "That's reassuring," he offered. The other alien inclined their head respectfully towards Saraline and withdrew without a word, the doors sealing soundlessly behind them. Ethan noticed the shift immediately. The room felt different when they were alone, less clinical, more charged. "You are cleared for limited mobility," Saraline said, approaching him. "Your recovery exceeds every projection." "Guess I adapt fast." "Yes," she agreed, "you do." She stopped a short distance away, not touching him this time, but close enough that he could feel the faint warmth radiating from her presence. "There is something you must understand," she continued. "Your survival has created complications." Ethan sighed. "There it is." "You were exposed to royal biogenic systems," she explained. "Systems not intended for non-Aurelian physiology. And your body did not reject them." That landed heavier than he expected. "What does that mean?" he asked carefully. Saraline studied him in silence, as though weighing how much truth he was prepared to carry. "It means," she said at last, "that you are now biologically marked by my intervention." "Marked?" The word settled uncomfortably in his chest. "Marked how?" he asked. Her glow shifted, subtle gold threading through the cooler tones. "In ways that are detectable," she said, "to certain individuals, to certain systems." "Like a medical tag?" he asked. "Like a declaration," she corrected. Ethan stared at her. "I didn't declare anything." "No," she agreed, "you did not." The silence stretched. "Then why does it feel like I accidentally signed something without reading the fine print?" he asked. Her gaze softened, not in pity but recognition. "Because intent is not always required for consequence," she said. "Sometimes proximity is enough." A low chime echoed through the chamber, not an alarm, an announcement. Saraline's posture straightened. "The Crown is requesting your presence," she said, formally. Ethan let out a breath. "Already? I haven't even had alien coffee yet." "You will not be presented as a subject," she said. "You will be presented as associated." "With you," he realized. "Yes." He hesitated. "Is that safe?" Her eyes met his, steady, honest. "For you," she said, "likely." "And for you." A pause. "That depends," she said quietly, "on what you choose to say." He searched her face for signs of manipulation and found none. Only responsibility. And something beneath it, something she hadn't named. "I don't want to cause trouble," he said. Her expression shifted then, the faintest flicker of something dangerously close to warmth. "You already have," she replied, "but not through malice." She extended a hand, not a command. An invitation. "If you trust me," she said, "walk with me." Ethan looked at her hand, then up at her eyes. Power radiated from her, not the loud kind, but the kind that didn't need to announce itself. He took her hand. The contact sent a subtle pulse through him, like recognition echoing through unfamiliar circuits. As the doors opened and the corridor beyond revealed itself, wide, luminous, filled with distant movement and unseen eyes, Ethan understood one thing with unsettling clarity. Whatever he had become in this place, it was no longer invisible, and whatever bond had begun forming between him and the woman beside him, it had already stepped into the public light. The corridor beyond the medical chamber was nothing like the utilitarian passageways Ethan had imagined. It was wide and gently curved, its surfaces alive with faint bioluminescent veins that pulsed in slow, synchronized rhythms. Figures moved along it with quiet purpose, Aurelian officers, attendants, healers, each one glancing briefly toward Ethan before quickly looking away. Not out of disinterest, out of awareness. Saraline's hand remained lightly closed around his as they walked, not possessive, not guiding, present. "You are being noticed," Ethan murmured. "Yes," she replied calmly. "Your biosignature is no longer neutral." That's a polite way of saying I stand out." "You stand out because you are under my protection," she said, "and because protection implies claim." He slowed slightly. "You keep using words like that." "They are accurate words," she answered. They approached a set of tall doors formed from interlocking crystalline panels. Soft light spilled through the seams, carrying a faint harmonic resonance that made Ethan's skin prickle. "This is the antechamber," Saraline said. "Beyond it is the presence hall." "Presence," he repeated, "not throne room." "The crown does not rule from elevation," she said. "It rules from proximity." That didn't make him feel better. The doors parted soundlessly. The chamber beyond was vast but not cavernous. The space was circular, its center open, its edges lined with organic structures that seemed grown rather than built. Light flowed downward from above like liquid gold, converging on a single figure standing at the center. She was taller than Saraline, older. Her presence filled the room without effort. The crown. Ethan felt it immediately, not fear but gravity. The kind that pulled attention inward whether you wanted it or not. Saraline released his hand. Not because she had to, because protocol demanded it. She stepped half a pace ahead of him and inclined her head in a precise, respectful gesture. Ethan followed her lead, hoping his imitation didn't offend. The crown's gaze settled on him. "So," she said, her voice resonant and smooth, carrying no need for amplification. "This is the human who survived royal intervention." Ethan swallowed. "That would be me." Saraline stiffened beside him. The crown's eyes flicked to her, something like amusement glinting briefly beneath the surface. "He speaks freely," the crown observed. "Yes, your radiance," Saraline said. "It is characteristic." "Is it," the crown replied, "or is it trust?" Ethan felt the weight of that question land squarely on him. "I don't know enough about your culture to be anything but honest," he said carefully. "Anything else feels dangerous." The crown studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "An adaptive answer," she said. "You are aware, human, that your survival was not a simple medical outcome." "Yes," Ethan replied. "I'm starting to get that impression." "You were exposed to systems reserved for those bound to the crown," she continued. "Systems that alter perception, physiology, and eventually status." Ethan's pulse quickened. "And yet I'm not bound." The crown tilted her head slightly. "Not formally," she agreed, "but you are marked." Saraline's glow shifted, subtle tension threading through it. "He did not consent to such implications," she said. "No," the crown replied gently. "But neither did you ask permission to save him." Saraline lowered her gaze. "I would do it again," she said without hesitation. Silence fell. The crown regarded her with something that looked like approval. "Of course you would," she said. Then her attention returned to Ethan. "Which leaves us with a question." Ethan straightened. "I was wondering when that part would come." "What will you do?" the crown asked. "Now that you cannot return to neutrality." He considered his answer carefully. Words mattered here. He could feel it, like standing on unfamiliar ice. "I want to understand," he said, "what your people see when they look at me now, and what she risks by standing beside me. Saraline's head turned sharply toward him. The Crown's smile deepened just slightly. A responsible response, she said, and an inconvenient one. Ethan met Saraline's gaze. For the first time since waking, he saw something close to uncertainty there. I don't want to be a liability, he said quietly. To you. But she held his gaze longer than was proper. Then you must learn what you are, she said, and what you mean. The Crown took a step forward, her presence intensifying. You will remain aboard this vessel, she said, not as a prisoner, not as a guest. Then as what? Ethan asked. As a variable, the Crown replied, one with potential. Ethan exhaled slowly. Story of my life, he muttered. The Crown laughed soft, genuine. Very well, she said. Saraline will oversee your integration personally. Saraline's breath caught just barely. That is a significant assignment, she said. It is a test, the Crown replied, for both of you. As they were dismissed and the chamber doors sealed behind them, the corridor felt quieter somehow, heavier. Saraline stopped walking. She turned to face him fully now, composure finally cracking enough to reveal concern. You should have let me speak for you, she said. I couldn't, Ethan replied. Not when this affects you. Her glow softened, warming in response. You do not yet understand what you've stepped into, she said. Then I guess it's a good thing I'm not stepping into it alone. For a moment she simply looked at him, then she nodded once. Yes, she said quietly, it is. And as they resumed walking, closer now than before, Ethan felt it again. That sense that, whatever line he had crossed, there was no longer a way back. Integration began the following cycle, not with ceremonies or declarations, but with structure. Ethan was assigned quarters adjacent to the Royal Medical Wing, closer than protocol typically allowed for an unbound off-worlder. The space was modest by Aurelian standards, but expansive compared to anything he'd known aboard human vessels. Curved walls responded subtly to his presence, light shifting as if learning him. Saraline stood just inside the threshold, hands folded behind her back, posture formal. This is where you will remain, she said, until the Crown determines your status. And until then, Ethan asked. Until then, she replied, you are my responsibility. He glanced around. You say that like it's dangerous. It is, she said calmly. They walked the space together, her explaining the functions of the room, environmental controls, privacy fields, medical monitoring embedded invisibly into the architecture. Everything was designed to observe without intruding. I will be expected to report any irregularities, she added. In me, he said. And in myself, she corrected. That gave him pause. Later, seated across from each other in the quiet of the chamber, Ethan studied her more openly than before. Not as a patient, not as a variable, as a woman carrying weight. You could have refused, he said. The Crown gave you that option. Yes, she acknowledged. So why didn't you? Her gaze didn't waver. Because you are not an incident to be managed. That sounds personal. It is, she admitted. The glow beneath her skin shifted, soft, restrained, intimate in a way he was beginning to recognize. Among my people, she continued, proximity creates resonance. Repeated interaction deepens it. You and I are already resonant. Ethan swallowed. Is that bad? It is irreversible, she said. Silence settled between them, not awkward but heavy with implication. What does integration actually involve? He asked. Saraline rose and moved closer, stopping just short of where protocol would demand distance. Observation, she said. Education, mutual adaptation. And supervision. Yes, he met her eyes. You don't like that part. No, she said, because it implies doubt. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then lowered again without touching him. If at any point the Crown believes my judgment compromised, she continued, this assignment will be revoked. And you, I will accept the consequence. Something tightened in Ethan's chest. That's not fair. She looked at him sharply. Fairness is not the metric here. Then what is? Meaning, she said quietly, that word again. Later, during their first structured session, Saraline guided him through Aurelian communication protocols. How eye contact signaled intent, how silence could imply consent or refusal depending on duration, how certain phrases carried implications far beyond their literal meaning. "You must learn restraint," she said. "Your species uses language casually, ours does not." "I noticed," he replied. "Seems like one wrong sentence here can rewrite your life." Her gaze lingered on him. "Yes," she said, "it can." The day passed in quiet intensity, learning, adjusting, testing boundaries. Neither of them spoke aloud. And yet, beneath it all, something shifted. The distance between them narrowed not in steps, but in awareness. That evening, as the ambient light softened into rest cycle hues, Ethan found himself standing beside her at the viewport, watching the slow drift of stars. "I don't feel like a variable," he said. "What do you feel like?" She asked. He considered. "Like I'm being chosen." Her glow flared bright, unmistakable. "That is dangerous to say," she said softly. "I'm not trying to," he replied. "I just feel it." She turned to face him fully now, composure carefully held together. "You must understand something," she said. "If the Crown concludes that what is forming between us is not incidental, then what? Then it will demand definition." Ethan met her gaze. "And if I refuse?" Her voice lowered. "Then you will be protected." "And you?" She did not answer immediately. "I will endure," she said at last. He stepped closer, not touching but present. "I don't want you to endure me," he said. "I want you to choose." Her breath caught just barely. "That," she whispered, "is exactly why this is dangerous." As the stars drifted silently beyond the glass, Ethan understood one thing with sudden clarity. Integration wasn't about learning a new culture. It was about deciding whether he was willing to become part of it, and whether she was willing to risk everything to let him. The Crown did not summon them immediately. That, Saraline explained, was never a good sign. "When the Crown observes without interruption," she said as they walked the quiet arc of the medical wing, "it means conclusions are forming." "About us," Ethan said, "yes." The word carried more weight now than it had days ago. Their integration sessions intensified. Not harsher, more intimate. Ethan was asked not only to learn Aurelian customs but to articulate his own. Why humans used humor in moments of stress. Why they softened truth with affection. Why they said things they didn't fully mean, yet felt them anyway. Saraline listened closely, not as an examiner, but as someone recalibrating her understanding of reality. "You treat language as emotional movement," she observed one cycle, "not as structure." "That doesn't mean it's meaningless," Ethan replied. "It just means we let meaning evolve." "That is frightening," she said quietly. "And freeing," he added. Her gaze lingered on him longer than protocol allowed. That night the Crown summoned Saraline alone. Ethan waited. The hours stretched, measured not by clocks but by the subtle shifts of the ship's internal rhythm. He tried to focus on the data tablets Saraline had left him, but his attention kept drifting back to the doorway. When she returned, something was different. Not broken, not shaken, resolved. "The Crown has offered you a choice," she said, standing just inside the threshold of his quarters. Ethan rose immediately. "About my status?" "Yes," she replied, "and about mine." His chest tightened. "She believes the resonance between us has reached a threshold," Saraline continued. "One that can no longer be categorized as medical or procedural." "So personal," Ethan said. "Yes." He held her gaze. "What's the choice?" She stepped closer, stopping just within arm's reach. "You may remain aboard this vessel as a protected external associate," she said. "Your safety would be guaranteed, your presence tolerated. And you?" "I would be reassigned," she said calmly. "Another Medikey would oversee your monitoring." Ethan didn't hesitate. "No." Her glow flickered, surprise quickly contained. "You have not heard the alternative." "I don't need to," he said. "I'm not doing this without you." Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. "The alternative," she said carefully, "is that you formally declare intent." Ethan's breath caught. "Intent to?" "To remain," she said. to bind your integration to mine. He searched her face for hesitation and found none, only caution, care. And what happens to you? He asked. If you do, she said, my role becomes redefined. In danger. In consequence, she corrected. Ethan exhaled slowly. So either I stay safely without you, or I stay with you and everything changes. Yes. He stepped closer, not touching but unmistakably present. You already chose, he said softly. Her eyes widened slightly. I did not. You did, he insisted gently. You chose the moment you intervened, the moment you stood beside me in the presence hall, the moment you didn't let the crown speak for you. Her glow warmed gold threading through silver. And now, she asked. He met her gaze, steady and certain. Now I choose back. The words hung between them, not a declaration, not yet, but something just as real. Caroline closed her eyes briefly as if steadying herself. If you proceed, she said, there is no return to neutrality, no quiet exit. You will be seen as aligned. With you, he said, yes. He smiled faintly. I'm starting to think neutrality was overrated. Her laugh was soft, unguarded, real. Then, she said quietly, we will face the crown together. She extended her hand. This time when he took it, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, only choice. As the ship's internal lights dimmed into rest cycle hues and the stars beyond the viewport drifted slowly past, Ethan felt something settle into place inside him. Not obligation, not fear, belonging. And somewhere deep within the flagship, unseen and attentive, the crown watched. Not to stop what was forming, but to see what it would become. The declaration was not immediate. That, Ethan learned, was deliberate. Intent within Aurelian culture was never spoken impulsively once consequences were understood. It required calibration, of words, of witnesses, of meaning itself. The crown did not rush such things, and neither did Caroline. They were given time, not isolation, but proximity without interruption. Their quarters were quietly reassigned, still separate spaces, but connected by a shared threshold that neither of them crossed without awareness. It was symbolic, Caroline explained, acknowledgement without assumption. This is as close as we may stand, she said, resting her hand briefly against the archway that connected their spaces. Until you speak. And once I do, Ethan asked. Then there will be no architecture between us, she replied, only choice. The days that followed were not filled with ceremony, but with honesty. They spoke of fear. Ethan admitted how close he'd come to returning to human command, how tempting neutrality had been, how easy it would have been to leave before connection deepened into responsibility. Caroline confessed how terrifying it was to care openly in a culture where clarity was protection and ambiguity could destroy reputations, futures, identities. To choose you, she said one cycle as they stood together at the viewport, is to accept that I will never again be unseen. That you already aren't, Ethan replied. You're just used to carrying it alone. She turned toward him, her luminescence soft and vulnerable. I do not know how to share that weight, she admitted. I'm not here to take it from you, he said quietly, just to carry my part. That answer stayed with her. When the crown summoned them again, it was not to the presence hall. It was to a smaller chamber, private, intentional, stripped of spectacle. No guards, no observers, only truth. You have been given space, the crown said, her voice calm and unadorned. Few receive that. I won't waste it, Ethan replied. The crown's gaze shifted to Caroline. And you, she said, do you accept what will follow? Caroline lifted her chin. I do, she said, with awareness. Silence followed, not tense but expectant. Then speak, the crown said, turning back to Ethan. Not carefully, not diplomatically. Honestly, Ethan said, yes. He took a breath. I came here because I wanted to help, he said. I stayed because I was saved. I'm choosing to remain, because I've found something that matters more than safety. He glanced at Caroline, meeting her eyes. I don't fully understand your world yet. I don't speak your language perfectly. I will make mistakes. The crown did not interrupt. But I choose to stand with her, Ethan continued. not as a liability, not as an obligation, as a partner willing to learn, adapt, and stay. Saraline's luminescence brightened, controlled but radiant. "That is intent," the crown said softly. She stepped back. "You will have one cycle," she continued, "to speak the words formally. After that, this path closes." Ethan nodded, understood. Later, alone again in the quiet of their shared threshold, Ethan turned to Saraline. "You don't have to do this," he said, "even now." "I know," she replied. "Then why are you still here?" She stepped closer, closer than protocol had allowed before. "Because when you choose with awareness," she said, "it is not something I wish to stand apart from." Her hand lifted, hesitated, then rested lightly over his heart. The glow beneath her skin responded immediately, pulsing in soft synchrony. "This," she whispered, "is not obligation." He covered her hand with his own. "No," he agreed, "it's commitment." They stood like that for a long moment, neither speaking. Outside the viewport, the stars drifted slowly past, unchanging, indifferent, vast. Inside, something fragile and deliberate was taking shape. One cycle remained. One choice left to speak aloud. And for the first time since waking in the medical chamber, Ethan felt completely ready to say the words. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The final cycle arrived without ceremony. No alarms, no summons, no pressure beyond what already lived in Ethan's chest. The chamber prepared for declaration was not grand. It was small, circular, almost intimate, walls alive with faint, steady light that responded to presence rather than authority. There were no observers beyond the crown herself, standing at a respectful distance, her expression unreadable but attentive. Saraline stood beside Ethan, not ahead of him, not behind, beside. That alone felt like a statement. "You may speak," the crown said gently, "when ready." Ethan didn't rush. He took a breath, not to steady himself but to feel where he was. The warmth of the air, the subtle hum of the ship, the presence of the woman next to him, whose glow had become as familiar to him as his own pulse. "I came here by accident," he said quietly. "At least, that's what I thought." The crown remained silent. "I didn't plan to stay," he continued. "I didn't plan to matter. And I definitely didn't plan to stand in a room like this, choosing something that changes everything." Saraline's glow warmed, but she did not look at him. She didn't need to. "But somewhere between waking up alive when I shouldn't have been, and realizing that someone powerful chose to save me knowing the consequences, I stopped thinking in terms of exits." He turned to face her fully now. "I'm not here because I'm bound," he said. "I'm here because I choose to be." Her breath caught just slightly. "I choose to remain," Ethan continued, voice steady. "I choose to learn, I choose to adapt. And I choose to stand with Saraline Valcora, not as a protected variable, not as an obligation, but as someone who understands the weight of intent and accepts it willingly." Silence filled the chamber, not empty silence, complete silence. Then the crown inclined her head. "Intent has been spoken," she said, "and understood." She stepped back, creating space, not distance but acknowledgement. "The bond is recognized," the crown continued, "not as possession, not as command, as alignment." Saraline turned toward Ethan then, composure finally giving way to something raw and luminous. Her glow bloomed, gold threaded with colors he still didn't have words for. "You chose," she said softly. "Yes," he replied, carefully. Her hand found his. This time there was no hesitation, no protocol pulling them apart, only connection. Later, when the chamber was empty and the ship had settled into its rest cycle rhythm, they stood together at the viewport of their shared quarters. No thresholds between them now, no symbolic barriers left to observe. "I don't know what this will look like," Ethan admitted. "What comes next?" "Neither do I," Saraline said. "But I know this, whatever follows will be faced openly." He smiled faintly. "That's new for me." "It will not always be easy," she added. "Good," he said. "Easy things rarely matter." She laughed softly, resting her head against his shoulder. Her glow pulsed gently, steady and calm. "You are no longer neutral," she said. "I know," he replied. I don't feel lost anymore. Outside, the stars continued their slow, endless drift, unconcerned with bonds or choices or consequences. Inside the flagship, something quieter but far more significant had taken root. Not a fairy tale, not a conquest, not an accident anymore. A beginning chosen deliberately, built carefully and strong enough to change what followed. And somewhere beyond the hull, beyond the crown's watchful gaze, beyond the safety of what was already known, the future waited.